Chapter 13. Belial. Pedophilia is an epidemic in the First World. It is hands down the biggest occult story in the world. It's too big to contain. That's why it keeps rearing its head. Every time it does, it gets knocked back down like a whack-a-mole game at the county fair by our complicit news media. They are the white noise in our societies, the cover-up artists, the getaway car. They're despicable. The public is convinced each time it's a conspiracy theory. The old axiom again, conspiracy theory, and the whole thing is played as ridiculous. Here's the New York Times in top form, leading the charge against Pizzagate, a satanic child sex and snuff ring run out of Washington, D.C. In the span of a few weeks, a false rumor that Hillary Clinton and her top aides were involved in various crimes snowballed into a wild conspiracy theory that they were running a child trafficking ring out of a Washington pizza parlor. The fast evolution of the false theory revealed how a powerful mix of fake news and social media led an armed North Carolina man to investigate the rumors about the pizza place, Comet Ping Pong, last Sunday. The unimpeachable New York Times even showed their work, like a grade 8 math assignment. 1. WikiLeaks began releasing emails hacked from the account of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, a month before the election. 2. Social media users on a popular Reddit forum dedicated to Donald J. Trump and 4chan's far-right fringe message board searched the releases for evidence of wrongdoing. 3. Within the emails were discussions that include the word pizza, including dinner plans between Mr. Podesta and his lobbyist brother, Tony Podesta. 4. A participant on 4chan connected the phrase cheese pizza to pedophiles, who on chat boards uses the initials CP to denote child pornography. 5. Following the use of pizza, theorists focused on the Washington pizza restaurant Comet Ping Pong. The WikiLeaks emails revealed that John Podesta corresponded with Comet's owner, James Alefontis, who had connections to Democratic operatives. 6. The theory started snowballing, taking on the meme #Pizzagate. Fake news articles emerged and were spread on Twitter and Facebook. 7. The false stories swept up neighboring businesses and bands that had played at Comet. Theories about kill rooms, underground tunnels, Satanism, and even cannibalism emerged in fabricated stories and on social media. 8. On December 4th, Edgar M. Welch, a 28-year-old from North Carolina, arrived at Comet with a military-style rifle and a handgun. The police said he fired the rifle inside the pizzeria, hurting no one, and surrendered after finding no evidence to support claims of child slaves being held there. 9. The shooting didn't put the theory to rest. Purveyors of the theory and fake news pointed to the mainstream media as conspirators of a cover-up to protect what they said was a crime ring. This is the role the media plays. Aside from direct participation, that is, as many senior broadcasters and Hollywood figures are pedophiles themselves. They obfuscate, confuse, confound, and ridicule the accuser. And it's not just in the United States. Everybody's in on it. The British Broadcasting Corporation, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, though, to their credit, ABC in Australia has done some good work on pedophilia among high-ranking people in Australia. This is not to say that every editor and reporter in print and broadcast is read in on the truth of occult pedophilia. Far from it. It works the same way 9/11 did. This is why I place the Babylonian money system at the top of the magical pyramid. It's through this money system that everything is held in place, whether it be the rampant global pedophilia or the nonsensical 9/11 story. Everybody just wants their status, their job, their salary, their vacations, their benefits afforded their children, and, of course, the precious pensions. And all of it can be turned off like a light switch with the money system. God help us all if these ghouls get their digital currency. These people are the agents of Belial, as Milton described him in Paradise Lost. Belial came last, then whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love, vice for itself. To him no temple stood, or altar smoked, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist, as did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. Now remember, I'm not advocating a literal reading of Christian doctrine. Rather, I'm simply using the consciousness template Milton gave in Paradise Lost to show you how these forces are still in play. The truth of the situation, as I'll repeat too many times to forget in this book, is that the demonic hierarchies are a diphomism. Warning signs not to go into this material and look at it too closely. The truth is these demons represent the commerce between negative extraterrestrials and their human familiars. The truth is so well hidden, many in the web of cults participating in ritual child sacrifices and pedophilia believe they are practicing a satanic Luciferian religion. Why wouldn't they? The gifts of status and prestige are bestowed upon them in the world. The demons, extraterrestrials, hold their end of the bargain from the fourth dimension, where they can see more of our time and circumstance than we can as human beings. And they reward those who provide them what they want, which is human blood and the exquisite astral energy of human pain, which is like a fine wine to them. This is the simple truth of it. With that said, it's really quite remarkable how much of this Milton understood. I truly believe the agents of the divine guided his poem at the crossroads in the human history. I truly believe the agents of the divine guided his poem at that crossroads in the human story. The time of the plague, the time of the Great Fire of London, the time of the worshipful fuelers. The Encyclopedia Britannica gives the following definition for Belial. Belial, a fallen angel in John Milton's Paradise Lost, who tries to persuade the others to be more discreet so that their unacceptable behavior is less conspicuous. The Hebrew word Belial, apparently with the literal meaning worthlessness, was used in Old Testament epithets for the wicked and impious, such as the sons of Belial. In later traditions, it was taken as a proper name, a by-name for Satan. This is why I place the media and mass communication in the role of Belial as Milton cast him. They're constantly covering up for the heinous actions of Mammon and Moloch. What the New York Times did with Pizzagate is disgraceful. The BBC in London is the worst. The satanic Luciferian culture is deeply entrenched in London. It goes back a few centuries. Masonry is deep esoteric science. It sprang from and commingles with the Talmudic Kabbalists, Solomon, the signet magic, demonic callings, and here you can just place interdimensional communication and extraterrestrials. John Edmonds and Bruce MacDonald had it absolutely correct in their book, Stardust Ranch. It's important also to note at this point that the word extraterrestrial, by the etymology alone, encompasses everything not of the earth that engages with human beings as individuated forms. Not many people consider how that includes all the angels and demons and all the gods that are populated in our religions. The actual creator of this transdimensional reality is not an individuated form as we understand beings and entities. The attribution of human qualities to the angels cannot be overlooked. They're extraterrestrial. They are not of the earth, but they are individuated beings. They even have names, like the Archangel Michael and the Archangel Gabriel. Even the gods we worship have names. My story is about the other names, Mammon, Moloch, and Belial. The names we've forgotten, even though they're whispered to our unconscious mind every day through the logos and the symbolism all around us. It's important to realize the obvious. Everything done with intent is intentional. It is most definitely intentional that the broadcasters and newspapers misdirect, cover up, and deceive. Here's an incomplete list of the special operations conducted in Britain to investigate child sexual abuse, police complicity, government complicity, intelligence complicity, and connections to the British royal family. Operation Grange, Operation Middleton, Operation Hydrant, Operation Fernbridge, Operation Milband, Operation Yewtree, and so on and so forth. Let's take a look at one of them. Operation Grange is an investigative review by London's Metropolitan Police Service into the circumstances of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The operation, conducted by the Homicide and Serious Crime Command, was initially led by Detective Chief Inspector Andrew Redwood, supported by a further 28 detectives and 7 other staff. In December 2014, the case was handed over to Detective Chief Inspector Nicola Wall. The review is overseen by the Gold Group management structure. The cost of the operation, which has been funded out of a special fund, has amounted to several £million. The review was launched in May 2011 following a request to Scotland Yard from Home Secretary Theresa May, with the support of the Prime Minister David Cameron. The issue of whether this request was the result of threats or persuasion from Rebecca Brooks was one of the issues raised at the Leveson inquiry. This is an excellent example because it illustrates the international aspect of the child rape, torture, and murder. The Podesta brothers are most certainly initiates in the satanic Luciferian cult. Now here's the story. The Podesta brothers were alleged to be in Portugal at the time of the murder. They were friends with Sir Clement Freud. I'll let the news introduce him. Here's the lead from a piece The Telegram in London printed on the 15th of June, 2016. Sylvia Woosley was a lonely 10-year-old desperately missing her absent father when a 24-year-old Clement Freud came into her life. After being introduced to him at a house party thrown by her mother, she was thrilled when he began paying her attention, arranging to take her on trips to the beach and filling the vacuum her father had left. I was overcome by his warmth, by his love, by his caring, by his generosity, she recalled. I felt, here's someone who cares for me. In fact, Freud's behavior was what we now know as grooming, and it was followed by decades of abuse of Sylvia and at least one other girl, which included violent rape. After his death in 2009, Sir Clement Freud, a massively connected man in London, had an undeniable backstory slip out in exactly the same manner as Jimmy Savile. Freud was a child rapist, a lifelong abuser and pedophile. Another monster revealed, but just barely, as child rape is the tip of the iceberg in the black magic world Freud comes from. It gets unspeakably dark. Here's his basic biography. Like his countryman, Jimmy Savile, he was plugged into British society at the highest levels. Sir Clement Raphael Freud was a British broadcaster, writer, politician, and chef. The grandson of Sigmund Freud and brother of Lucian Freud, he moved to the United Kingdom from Germany as a child and later worked as a prominent chef and food writer before becoming known to a wider audience as a television and radio personality. He was elected as a Liberal Member of Parliament in 1973, retaining his seat until 1987 when he received a knighthood. The Podesta brothers are alleged to have been in Portugal at the same time as the McCanns, and at the very same resort town as the McCanns. That's why the police renderings of the suspects match the Podesta brothers. However, don't run to conclusions. The Podesta brothers may have been leveraged by the investigation as a warning, a way of keeping them in line. You really never know for sure. With all that said, they are satanic child rapists and murderers. A quick look at their art collection confirms that for me. Their friend, Sir Clement Freud, had a beautiful vacation villa there. It was only about 700 meters from the hotel at which the McCanns were staying. Small world. In the days after 3-year-old Madeleine's disappearance, Sir Clement reached out to the grieving parents. Remember, this happened in 2007. Sir Clement died in 2009. The McCanns accepted his invitation to dine with him at his villa. Remember also, his reputation was not besmirched until after his death. People like Freud and Savile are untouchable while they're alive. They're protected by police, intelligence organizations like MI6, politicians, and finally judges. If the early safety nets fail and they end up in court, yes, it goes that deep. I sometimes think people just don't want to believe this due to the inconvenience it causes them. It certainly can't be for lack of information. It's everywhere. You'd have to be walking around with your eyes down all the time not to see it now. The media does an efficient job of quashing regional and national accusations, like the American mainstream media throwing water on the Pizzagate fire. The New York Times and Rolling Stone led the charge against the conspirators. What you'll notice about these media spins is how poorly they quash the idea. Neither the New York Times nor Rolling Stone really explained what the coded language was in the hacked Podesta emails produced by WikiLeaks. They simply state conspiracy theorists assert the language, hot dog, pizza, walnut, and others, mapped to forms of child sex abuse. Okay, fair enough. Then why, with multiple investigative reporters assigned to the byline in the New York Times, do they not explain what the language means? No rational reader of those emails could conclude the oft-repeated words were not being used as code for something. So if not child sex abuse, pedophilia, and murder, then what? I guess the New York Times didn't feel their reporters needed to answer that question. After all, how much time were they actually going to spend on this nonsense? And isn't the fact that the New York Times, one of the oldest and most respected daily print newspapers in the world, even having to waste time on this a waste of valuable resources to begin with? Gosh darn it all. That pesky internet rumor mill populated by unemployed amateur sleuths has to be corrected by the establishment media. Sure, we get it. So where's the rebuttal? There isn't one. The sum total of any one of these mainstream pieces is, you don't actually believe this, do you? Once again, people don't want to believe it. So why can't these serious and established media outlets actually debunk it? Because it's true. And why would an editor, sitting around a team meeting with desk reporters at the New York Times, not suggest something like this organized pedophilia and Satanism story keeps popping up in North America and Europe? Why don't we do a comprehensive piece on UK allegations, Australian allegations, Canadian allegations? And hey, just for good measure, why don't we also take a look at this Dutroux case in Belgium? They never do. They're not interested in solving anything. The media is controlled from the top down. If the people who control the media, even state-owned media like the BBC and CBC, don't want it told, then it's not going to get told. I'm certainly not talking about a conspiracy that wide. All control is done through compartmentalization. It's the military model. The desk reporters would get very tight marching orders on how to investigate and report on a story like Pizzagate. Like I keep saying, Mammon, the money and finance system, runs the whole show. Moloch and Belial work under Mammon. Most of this stuff goes on and is allowed to go on for the same reason we have not called out 9/11. Because people are afraid of losing their jobs, their societal status, their pensions, their medical and dental benefits, and quite possibly severe civil litigation liabilities from the parties accused. Who wants to take all that on? And for what? A conspiracy theory? There's an international child trafficking ring among the world's elite who belong to blood cults. No. Most people are going to shut up that voice in their head, go home, eat some ice cream, and watch some HBO. I don't blame them, really. It's a shit show. I'm going to tell you how deep and dark this goes. I'm going to do it very quickly, like pulling a bandage off. I have no inside knowledge of this case. I don't know any of these people or people who know them. I'm speaking from my understanding of this cult, what they are seeking to do, and in what they take satisfaction. When the McCanns went to Freud's for a meal, they were probably served their own child. Her flesh as meat put into a gourmet dish by Sir Clement, who had published books on cooking. Why do I say this? A seasoned child rapist and Satanist like Freud would be committed to defilement. Remember, the Satanist likes to defile human beings. And when you know what this particular sect of black magic does in observance to its Lord, then it's pretty easy to figure out. Freud lacked the basic human empathy to comfort the McCanns, which leaves the question, Why would a seasoned child rapist reach out to the parents of a recently raped and murdered child? It's as I told you. Consuming the victim is a sacrament in the black arts associated with the deep satanic cults. Cannibalism is a part of it. Tricking the parents into dining on their own child's flesh is part of the thrill of defilement. This is, of course, assuming the McCanns were not in on it, and there's no way to know if their child was abducted or they sold Madeleine to these cult members, either for money, favor, or position in this satanic underworld. I'm truly sorry I have to tell you these things, but we are way past the point where you can be mollycoddled. People need to know they are living in a system that is nearly completely satanic. As I have said already in this story, the left-hand path is never really going to go away. If they can't steal our children and infiltrate our security, intelligence, financial, educational, medical, and legal systems, then they'll go back to what they used to do, what the McCanns might have done, sacrifice their own children. It then really becomes an exercise of their own free will. It's horrible, yes, but it's always been here, and it might never go away. What Bruce and I are trying to do in this story is let you know the degree to which it has infiltrated your systems. These black arts are supercharged now. Remember, all of this is a dysphomism. But how could such contempt, such defilement of humanity arise in a fellow human being? They do not regard themselves as human. They are not of our race, the human race. They have bonded with extraterrestrials, made alliances and deals. You think this is nuts? What race did King Solomon make a deal with? What built the Temple of Solomon? They say demons. I'm telling you, it's a dyphomism. This is humanity's most pronounced, recent contact with extraterrestrials. It's been right there in front of us the whole time. Think of what these once human beings are doing as a gang initiation. Except the gang is another race. And to prove loyalty to them, you must prove your loyalties do not rest with humanity. All the feeling, empathy, and collaboration of being human is voided. That's how to explain people like Sir Clement Freud. Whether the Podesta brothers raped and killed that poor little girl in Portugal is pure speculation. Only a moron, and the list of morons includes the New York Times and Rolling Stone, would defend the idea that child sex and murder rings in Washington are a conspiracy theory. The ugly child sex and snuff story reared its head in Belgium through the Marc Dutroux case. Dutroux was a pedophile and child murderer, the Belgian Jimmy Savile, if you will, but not quite as prolific as Savile. Both men share a connection with the elites of their society, money elites and political elites, and, in the case of Savile and Freud, connection to royalty. What started out as a normal serial killer investigation in Belgium morphed into a conspiracy that remains unresolved to this day, just as the British royals remain scathed but officially not implicated in the Savile child rape and murder network. As these connections to a high-placed ring of pedophiles emerged in the Dutroux case, the original judge and the original police investigation team were replaced. Survivors of Dutroux were intimidated and discredited by the new police investigators. They were dismissed as delusional and drunk on the attention and notoriety being associated with the case gave them. It was extremely disheartening, and a replay of the abuse they had received at the hands of Dutroux. This time, the Belgian justice system playing the role of abuser. All in all, some 20 witnesses who could have corroborated the claim of a high-level pedophile ring mysteriously died, usually by violence, while the case snaked through the Belgian justice system. To its credit, the Belgian media wasn't as servile as the American media in its treatment of the case. Belgian society was brought to the brink of revolution. While on the topic of serial killers and well-connected child rapists and murderers, Tony Podesta had a statue in his apartment of a man in the same excruciating position as one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. The brothers also had a lot of paintings of children in bathing suits. Often the children would be in a tiled room, like an empty swimming pool or a large Russian bathhouse. The tile, of course, is easy to clean and wash blood off. The same is true of Jeffrey Epstein, a prolific child rapist and murderer, procurer for the decadent elites who frequented his ranches and island resort. Epstein is alleged to have been deeply connected to the CIA and Mossad, which are practically the same organization from an information and proclivities perspective. Epstein was alleged to be a honeypot, which is a term used in intelligence whereby influential people are compromised, in this case photographed and videotaped having sex with children, or perhaps even murdering children. Epstein was a friend to everybody of importance, the envy of every social ladder-climbing pimp who ever lived, and a watermark for the corruption within Washington and Hollywood. And of course, there was no follow-up, no connecting Pizzagate and Epstein, and certainly no much-needed editorial meeting at the unimpeachable New York Times or Rolling Stone. Funny how that works. Such vigorous defense of the nonsense of Pizzagate, the simple-minded buffoons who propagated it, the complicity of the liberated and do-as-thou-wilt personal media studios provided by YouTube and WordPress. You see, we told you, leave journalism to the professionals. Otherwise, people show up with long arms at a pizza shop in Washington. Yet they refuse to do their jobs, frightened off by phone calls from the solicitors at Buckingham Palace and other places of high importance around the world and home in the United States as well. Pensions, salaries, medical and dental, little league fees, and those little extras the spouses like. That's all it takes to buy silence on demonic activities. It's a shit show. It's important to understand the forces behind these acts. Pedophilia is an access point for extraterrestrials to harvest the energy of children. The extraterrestrial possesses the rapist from the astral plane, shields the rapist from the emotions associated with the act, which a normal human being would be repulsed by, and then takes the energy. I know this sounds absurd, but I assure you it's true. In the ritual satanic abuse circles, the victims are tortured to death. The pain generated is the energy sought on the other side. There are many levels to it. Those abused as children often go on to become abusers. They become the scapegoats, the low-hanging fruit for the impotent law services. They are not part of the occult dimension of pedophilia. They are true victims, used and discarded by occultists, if not killed, in a manner that would make animal harvesting in commercial meat operations look humane. As for the occult pedophilia, we have to go back to the definition of extraterrestrial. It can be any non-corporeal being acting through the corpus and sharing the consciousness space of the living being. The greatest disservice done to the notion of possession is done by the clergy. They misrepresent it, as in The Exorcist, written by William Peter Blatty, both the book and screenplay, and directed by William Friedkin. It's much more subtle than that. I have to clarify. The devil is real. I'll talk more about that in the Palo Mayombe chapter. Evil spirits are real. The reason I characterize it as extraterrestrial is because when you get beyond this layer, the spiritual aspects of the lower fourth dimension, you can see that extraterrestrials run all of it. They orchestrate the possessions, the hauntings, the poltergeists, and things of this nature. These dubious controllers, the men in black fedoras and black suits, who I was psychically introduced to when I sat down with the CIA ghoul in the Philippines, run the whole show. They work with other extraterrestrial races that are here for energy commerce. And they work with and control the disincarnate human beings caught in these spectral realms. When an institution like the Catholic Church does exorcisms, they like to point out that the demons despise the Church. Why would that be? The Church is part of the diabolical triumvirate of the church is part of the diabolical triumvirate of Washington, D.C., London City, and Rome. The three of them representing the seat of power for the satanic Luciferian. The three of them representing the seat of power for the satanic Luciferian kingdom on earth, with Jerusalem poised to consolidate the power in one center per the biblical stratagem, which devotees call prophecy. So why would a demonic force hate the church? Possibly because it's a disincarnate spirit that was tortured and maligned by the church in the past. And the heavy karma of the situation prevents the spirit from moving on, preferring to stay and seek vengeance or redress upon those responsible for the pain. Nothing is as simple and one-dimensional as it appears. The influence of Belial extends far beyond the media. It's in academe, literature, and art. The defiler works to corrode the attributes of the Creator and His creation: innocence, beauty, harmony, and grace. Consider a human race that could develop the modern theory of music, the scales, the instruments, wind, string, and piano, and consider modern music, which has degenerated to non-stop sex and violence, whether it be pop music for suburban kids or gangster rap in the projects. From Mozart to this, how did it happen? Hollywood and the music industry is the home of Belial. The stories have been leaking out for years now about the satanic rituals and pedophilia there. They're true. Harvey Weinstein is the tip of the iceberg, and the benign, primetime version. It just gets darker from there. It's always been there. Disclosure has been a mandate on the other side since the beginning. It's part of creational law. We are told in every generation. Here's a poem by William Butler Yeats from 1989 titled The Stolen Child. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. The poem is about a child being seduced to leave the world with fairies. In university curriculum, it's taught as a warning about the dangers of the occult. It's about child sacrifice, in my opinion. The fairies are an otherworldly race, rarely seen by humans, and more associated with elemental beings. Why do I say it's probably about child sacrifice? Yeats was fascinated with the occult, despite his caution to others about the dangers of the occult. He was a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn, an occult order heavily influenced by the Rosicrucians, the Kabbalah, and Freemasonry, the same pond of occult fishing that commenced institutional Satanism. Aleister Crowley was also a member, though he took initiations in many occult paths. Crowley is a much maligned figure. Most of it comes from religious opinion, which, when you understand what's going on in religions, doesn't carry a lot of moral weight. The point here is that what we are experiencing in our society is not new, only the scale of it, the institutionalization of it. Crowley lived at a time when magical practices were more discussed. Spiritualism was more socially popular at the turn of the 18th century. He cycled through a number of paths, initiations, and courses of study. His magical biography is a compendium of the available mystery schools at the time. He also formed his own religion magical school called Thelema. Crowley was so inhuman, his own child died from neglect. If these demons, as I am presenting them here, Mammon, Moloch, and Belial, have always been here, then why can't we see them? Because we've been spiritually robbed. We've been robbed of the basic relationship between imagination and reality, and with it, we can't see anything outside the senses and the mind. They've been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Medieval European peasants could see them more easily than we can in the modern world.
Communities were more tightly knit. Missing children raised alarm. Today, they can disappear right in front of us with the whole world watching, as was the case with Madeleine McCann. And nobody sees anything, except those with the eyes to see, those with the internal eye, with an understanding of what these predators are, how they behave, stalk, apprehend, devour, and the scat they leave behind. It's a nearly 1-to-1 match for tracking in the bush. A master bush tracker can tell what has moved through the bush by the ways the foliage and tree limbs are bent or broken. It's the same thing with the satanic predator. Once you know their paw prints, their scent, their watering hole, you can see them any time you want. But can we do anything about it? What happened in World War II utterly changed the world. We came out of that war tagged and chipped like polar bears being studied at the North Pole. Everything you think is an organic evolution is a CIA MI6 blueprint. Music, literature, feminism, psychedelics like LSD, everything. I'll choose one to make my point: literature. I've already commented on the degeneracy of music in the 20th century. The beat writers were a group of like-minded scribes of both poetry and prose in the 60s. They were one of the more prominent groups to define postmodernism in America and the world. Two of their chief voices were Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs. Ginsberg is best known for his long poem, Howl, Burroughs for his novel, Naked Lunch. Both men were well-traveled, prolific drug users, and pedophiles. Ginsberg professed a lifelong affinity for Buddhism, though it's dubious if he made any real progress towards a higher consciousness or a more giving and open heart. And Burroughs was fascinated by black magic and Egyptian religion. It's interesting how the link between magic and the attraction to prepubescent boys is made public through Burroughs. That's how Belial rolls. He promotes the profane. Burroughs also murdered his wife and got away with it. He claimed it was an accident. He shot her with a revolver. Why he was married in the first place is as much a curiosity as why he shot her. His predilection for homosexuality and pedophilia was present throughout his life. Here's part of a letter Burroughs wrote to Ginsberg and fellow beat writer Jack Kerouac in the mid-50s while living in Tangiers. The Italian school is just opposite, and I stand for hours watching the boys with my 8-power field glasses. Curious feeling of projecting myself, like I was standing over there with the boys, invisible earthbound ghost, torn with disembodied lust. They wear shorts, and I can see the goose pimples on their legs in the chill of the morning, count the hairs. Did I ever tell you about the time Marv and I paid the 2 Arab kids 60 cents to watch them screw each other? We demanded semen too, no half-assed screwing. So I asked Marv, "Do you think they will do it?" And he says, "I think so. They are hungry." They did it. Made me feel sort of like a dirty old man. Lovely fellow, that Burroughs. They are hungry. Both Howl and Naked Lunch were the subjects of court trials on obscenity. They were deemed lawful. In many ways, the beats paved the way for the modern progressive millennial and firmly wed Belial to the liberal side of the political aisle. Of course, the right has Mammon, and they share Moloch. The Democrats and Republicans are equally comfortable at Bohemian Grove, and yes, Bohemian Grove does derive etymologically. Bohemian Grove does derive etymologically from Jacob Boehm, the German philosopher, Christian mystic, and Lutheran Protestant theologian, who I quoted in an earlier chapter. It is not to be thought that the life of darkness is sunk in misery and lost as if in sorrowing. There is no sorrowing, for sorrow is a thing that is swallowed up in death, and death and dying are the very life of the darkness. Now I'm going to explain something to you. It's something no university professor, sociologist, psychiatrist, or clergy can explain to you. My unique life path and oscillation between light and dark have given me unique insights. Certainly others have them. The high servants of Mammon, Moloch, and Belial know what I am about to say. But because their worlds are occulted from the unwashed masses, except for rare expressions in writers like Burroughs, because it's art, don't you know, they will never directly tell you. When mass death occurs, the whole world is affected. Doors are opened. Human spirits leave their mortal shells. There's a resonant stickiness to any scene of extreme violence. Ask any homicide detective if you doubt what I'm saying. Massive, violent death, like the world wars, open big doors. Things leave and things come in. That's right, things come in. The transformation of American society after World War II was not an organic evolution, not a new age. It became, and still is, a post-mortem society, not a post-modern society. The poetry of their predecessors, the moderns, was largely an attempt to deal with World War I. Here's T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men, written in 1925. We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless, as wind in dry glass, or rat's feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. That was Eliot's attempt to encapsulate post-World War I Europe and America. By the end of the Second World War, there was no more reflection, no more attempt to mediate with the values, aesthetics, and morality at the root of Western culture. Art was now paying a pittance to starving Arab boys to have sex for the amusement of depraved Americans. From literature it moved to music. We had the he-she artist of the 70s. Is it a man or a woman? David Bowie, Elton John, Freddie Mercury, and one after the other, driving home this drug-fueled sexual dysphoria. The 80s then bring us the Whore Queen, Madonna, and the many minions that followed her. That was for the heterosexuals who wouldn't engage the outrageous sexual dysphoria of the he-she artists in the 70s. Pornography, truly believed to be an art form by the early pioneers in the 70s, has now become a mainstay in our culture, using more global bandwidth on the internet than anything else. Long gone is the filmed pseudoerotica of the 70s. It's basically rape, gang rape, mock incest, and humiliation shot on video now. Belial is the most subtle of the three demons. He's art, psychiatry, literature, advertising, public relations, speechwriting, and anything else that helps cover up the horror of it all. The genius of Belial is that by avoiding the reality of evil, even admitting such a thing exists, the natural slowly becomes preternatural.
End of chapter.